One of the biggest problems in the world currently, even in the most developed countries such as the United States, is increasing income gap between the few very rich individuals and the majority of the low and middle class people struggling to improve their economic conditions. As Indonesia works hard to boost the country's growth, we too must be careful that our efforts do not result in further increasing the country's already existing income disparity between the wealthy and the ordinary Indonesian. Growth should not only be high, but it should also be inclusive and can lift the poor out of their poverty and strengthen the wealth of the middle class, as the price of inequality for any country in the long run is great.
How come we don't hear too much about inequality in the US if it is one of the highest in the advanced countries, and especially given the price of inequality is very high? Why is that not sort of a top of the agenda?
It is going towards the top. President Obama gave a speech a couple years ago saying it was going to be the top of his agenda for his remaining 3 years. Thomas Piketty wrote a book called 21st Century Capitalism, where he argued that the period between World War II and 1980 should be viewed as unusual. It was the one period where inequality was very low, but we're going back to the bad old days of very high level of inequality. And his book got an enormous reception in the United States because he spoke to a growing concern in the United States. Now, obviously, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. government doesn't advertise. We are not a model to follow because while the top has done very well, the average American citizen has a per capita, has an income adjusted for inflation lower than it was 25 years ago. That's something you don't advertise. We don't advertise the fact that the typical American male, median, half above, half below, has a full-time worker, has an income as low as it was 40 years ago. If somebody said, that's the American model, nobody would want to touch it.
I mean, we would be, 40, 50 years ago. I mean,
Can you imagine? Can you imagine 40 years of stagnation? I mean, when I came to Bali 37 years ago, it was a totally different place.
You're optimistic that the American government will be a lot more responsive in terms of delivering the right policies that benefit everybody, as opposed to the especially just a handful of special interests, all the bankers and the CEOs or whatever. Are they on that path with his Obama administration? I mean, I see he has a lot of resistance. No, you're not optimistic.
So I'm not very optimistic. Let me say, we are making some progress. We passed, after a very big fight, a financial reform bill. 75% of Americans wanted much stronger regulations. We had a balance of power. 10 banks were equal to 300 million Americans in democratic influence. Not a good picture. Right now, 75% of Americans believe that we should increase our minimum wage. Our minimum wage is at the same level that it was roughly a half century ago, adjusted for inflation. But Congress won't pass it. The administration, by executive order, has raised the minimum wage from a little over $7 to $10.10 an hour, but it was only for government contractors.
Okay.
So that shows you how difficult it is in our political environment. But I have to say,
it's not going to be so difficult in the Indonesian new government.
I think I'm more optimistic about Indonesia. But I have to say, I have a little optimism. Otherwise, I wouldn't be writing my books. I wouldn't be campaigning so hard.
How was your book received in general, especially by the policymakers? Are they just saying, there's this Stiglitz being, his socialist self, or what?
No, it was very well received. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for a very long time. It's come out in paperback. It's gotten a lot of attention, and I think the basic ideas have seeped in to the basic mindset. So Americans are aware of it, but the political forces are very great. One of the important points I make here is, in a democracy, in any economy, any society, when you have a great deal of economic inequality, it can get translated into political inequality. And one of the reasons why you want to tame economic inequality is you want to maintain your democracy. We moved too much in America to a system of $1, one vote, rather than one person, one vote. Back in the end of the 19th century, there was a great deal of worry about the power of trust, the power of monopolies, and we broke them up. We passed antitrust laws, and the concern wasn't so much economic efficiency. That was one of the concerns. The real concern was the dangers of the concentration of political power, and that issue is still with us today.
And we've seen, the Occupy Wall Street movement gaining grounds and so on. So it's better for the government to listen to the people, right?
I think that's right, and there is now a strong social movements focusing on this issue. When the president wanted to appoint somebody who had been too closely connected with the financial sector and deregulation to a position as chairman of the Federal Reserve, there was an outpouring of opposition, and the president had to back off and appoint somebody who worried about unemployment and ordinary Americans. And that was an achievement for our democratic processes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Stiglitz, and also for the warning that perhaps the American model is not exactly the best model when it comes to creating equality,
shared prosperity.
Shared prosperity. Although we hear so much about America, the land of opportunity, and so on. Obviously, that is not quite the case anymore.
That's right.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Professor.
you.
And it's good to see you, and hope
Nice
to
to
see you again
Again.
here in Indonesia, in Bali. And well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indonesia as a country has large potentials for growth. We have rich natural resources. We have a huge domestic market and a demographic dividend of large working age population. However, we need to grow significantly, a lot more than our current 5.2%, in order to create job and labor market, in order to improve people's welfare as well as reduce poverty and unemployment. And in order to do that, the new government has to implement good economic policies, and we cannot continue business as usual. And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to join me next month when we meet another person who makes a difference to our lives on Face to Face with Daisy Anwar, bringing you the world.